Right. Let's just dive straight into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking an absolute mind-bender of a masterpiece, Girish Karnad's brilliant 1971 tragic comedy, Hayvadna. Now, I gotta warn you, this isn't just your standard run-of-the-mill play. It's really more like a deeply philosophical puzzle, wrapped up in myth, magic, and, well, a whole lot of very messy human emotion.
I want you to start by asking yourself something kinda wild. If your head was suddenly magically attached to someone else's body, who would you be? Would you be the mind that thinks and reasons? Or would you be the physical body that acts and feels? It's the ultimate philosophical thought experiment, right? And it goes right to the very heart of how we actually define our own identity.
So, this totally bizarre premise of a head swap, that's really the core of our explainer today. Karnad takes this fantastical scenario and uses it to explore the human search for a unified self. And as we're going to see, this struggle to reconcile our logical brains with our physical, primal desires, it isn't just some fantasy trope. It is a universal, everyday human crisis. Okay, so here's our roadmap. We'll be covering 1. The ultimate identity crisis. 2. Mind versus body. 3. A tragic head swap. 4. Incompleteness. 5. Theater of roots. And finally, 6. Are we complete?
Section 1. The ultimate identity crisis, the ultimate mix-up. The play kicks things off with this theme of hybridity, being made of mismatched parts, right out of the gate. It actually opens with a prayer, a puja, to Lord Ganesha, the Hindu deity who famously has an elephant's head and a boy's body. Now, the narrator points out that while Ganesha represents perfection, his physical form is actually mixed. And literally right after that, we meet a character named Hayvadna, which translates to horseface. He's this creature with a horse's head and a man's body, and he is just agonizing over his incomplete state, desperate to become fully human. It perfectly sets up this whole idea of hybridity as both a divine ideal and a seriously agonizing human curse.
Section 2. Mind versus the body. A tale of two friends.
So we meet these two best friends, and they literally couldn't be more different. On one side, we have Devadatta. He represents the mind. He's this intellectual poet, delicate, sensitive, just completely unmatched in intelligence. Then on the other side, we've got Kapila. He represents the body. He's the son of a blacksmith, this powerfully built rustler who's driven entirely by physical action and raw strength. Karnad basically turns these two guys into walking, talking symbols of intellect versus physicality. And of course, the whole conflict ignites because, you guessed it, they both fall head over heels for the exact same woman, the incredibly sharp and beautiful Padmini.
Now, Kapila initially agrees to help woo Padmini for his best friend, Devadatta, but the second he meets her, he immediately recognizes her intense, fiery nature. He literally notes what she needs is a man of steel. He knows Devadatta is just way too sensitive for her, and he knows, deep down, that he is the physically strong man she actually desires on a primal level. It's a brilliant piece of self-awareness, and it perfectly foreshadows the intense jealousy that's about to completely tear this trio apart.
Section 3. A tragic head swap, jealousy, and chaos.
Okay, so here is where things go completely off the rails. Padmini marries the intellectual Devadatta, but she is very clearly lusting after Kapila's muscular physique. Devadatta, driven absolutely mad by jealousy and insecurity, sneaks away to the temple of the goddess Kali and brutally cuts off his own head. When Kapila discovers his best friend's body, he's struck with such overwhelming grief that he beheads himself too. Later, Padmini finds them both. She's actually about to end her own life when the goddess Kali intervenes, telling Padmini she can revive the men if she just places their heads back on their bodies. But, and here's the kicker, in the sheer frantic panic of the Dark Temple, Padmini accidentally switches their heads.
At first, they actually think they've hit the absolute jackpot. They literally hold hands and joyfully sing this rhyme together. What a good mix. No more tricks. Padmini is thrilled because she thinks she now has the ultimate husband, Devadatta's brilliant poetic head firmly attached to Kapila's powerful muscular body. There is this deeply comic irony here. They mistakenly think they've achieved the perfect unified balance of mind and body without any consequences whatsoever.
Section 4. The curse of incompleteness. The curse. So initially, Devadatta argues a pretty logical point. The head is the master of the individual, therefore the body must naturally follow it. Basically, the man with his head is the true husband, and Padmini agrees. But soon enough, the intellectual mind begins to completely alter its new physical vessel.
Because Devadatta's head couldn't care less about exercise or physical labor, Kapala's previously muscular body begins to go soft. Slowly but surely, that strong body reverts back to Devadatta's original, delicate frame.
Padmini comes to this really profound realization, asking, the head always wins, doesn't it? As she watches her supposedly perfect hybrid husband lose all of his physical strength. But actually, scratch that, it's not that simple. Meanwhile, the real Kapila, who was stuck with Devadatta's frail body, escapes to live in the forest. Through sheer force of will and intense physical labor, he forces his new, weak body to become muscular again. Yet, he's deeply haunted. He confesses that his new body retains Devadatta's physical memories. We're talking intimate sensations and feelings he never actually experienced himself.
The tragedy here is just absolute. Both men essentially revert back to their original physical states, but they are totally broken. Devadatta loses his borrowed strength and becomes so miserable he even stops writing poetry. Kapila gets his muscles back, sure, but he's tortured by these lingering physical memories that aren't even his. Padmini realizes her desire is still hopelessly, completely split between the two of them. Ultimately unable to reconcile these agonizing half-existences, the two men engage in a sword fight and kill each other in what is essentially an act of mutual twisted mercy.
Section 5. The Theater of Roots, Decolonizing the Stage.
We need to zoom out a bit here to look at the creator, Girish Karnad. He was a leading figure in what's known as the Theater of Roots movement. Following India's independence from British colonial rule back in 1947, a lot of artists wanted to actively decolonize the stage. So instead of just performing standard Western plays, they went back to their roots. They used regional Indian languages, traditional religious rituals, and classical aesthetics to forge this distinctly modern, yet uniquely Indian theatrical identity.
And this is where Karnad's genius really shines. He brilliantly blends all these elements. He uses the Kannada language alongside regional forms like Yakshagana and Nataka theater. He heavily uses masks and half-curtains to highlight the meta-theatrical, almost comedic nature of the story by taking ancient Sanskrit myths from the Kathasarid Sagara and mixing them with intensely modern psychological themes. He is intentionally pushing back against the idea of a single monolithic Indian identity.
This meta-theatrical blending of styles, it's a highly deliberate choice. Karnad uses the fragmented, hybrid structure of the narrative itself to comment on the diverse, multi-layered identity of India. Just like the tragic characters in our story, the nation is made up of beautifully mismatched parts, rich with varying traditions that can sometimes pull in totally different directions.
Section 6. Are we ever complete? The final question.
Remember our buddy Hayvadna, the guy with the horse's head from the very beginning? Well, he actually does achieve completeness at the end of the play, but there is a massive catch. He begs the divine forces to make him complete, and instead of making him a full human, they turn him into a complete horse. And the final crushing irony here is that he even loses his human voice, trading his very last piece of humanity for an animal's neigh. He finds unity, for sure, but only by giving up his human nature entirely.
Which leaves us with this huge, lingering question. Think about it. The divine is perfectly complete in its hybridity. The animal finds peace when it gives up its human voice. But the human characters, they are destroyed by their inability to reconcile their logical minds and their physical bodies. What this brilliantly suggests is that to be human is to be inherently wonderfully yet tragically conflicted. So what do you think? Is true completeness simply impossible for us? Are we destined to forever remain fragmented, caught somewhere between logic and desire?